The dog was too weak to stand, but he was still strong enough to become the lock. Former Gunnery Sergeant Ryan Mitchell saw the shape beneath the maintenance awning just before sunrise, half hidden by drifting snow along an old service road outside Colorado Springs. At first, it looked like a dark bundle pressed against the concrete wall. Then the headlights caught the outline of a German Shepherd. Ryan stopped the truck and stepped into air sharp enough to sting his face. Shadow. One ear moved. Barely. Ryan crossed the snow quickly, boots sinking several inches with each step. Shadow was 9 now, older than the dog Ryan remembered from training fields and long afternoons beside Staff Sergeant Daniel Foster. His black and tan coat was stiff with cold, snow clinging along his shoulders and back. Between his front legs sat a heavy olive-drab ammunition box, scratched at the corners, its canvas-carrying strap half buried beneath one paw. Ryan dropped to one knee. "Easy, boy. It is me." Shadow opened his eyes. Recognition came slowly, but it came. Ryan touched the side of his neck. Cold. Too cold. He pulled off one glove and checked the dog again, then reached for the ammunition box so he could move it aside before lifting Shadow. The reaction was immediate. Shadow dragged his chest across the lid and pressed both front legs tighter around it. No growl. No snap. No aggression. Just refusal. Ryan stopped. "You cannot even stand." Shadow stared at him. Ryan tried again, this time sliding his fingers beneath one corner of the box. The dog shifted what little weight he had left and covered more of the lid with his body. Ryan felt something tighten in his chest. He had seen military working dogs protect equipment before. He had seen them refuse distractions, hold positions, and wait through noise and confusion. But this was different. Shadow was not guarding a perimeter. He was using himself as the lock. Wind moved through the bare branches beyond the road. Fine snow whispered across the metal surface. Ryan looked at the box, then at Shadow. Whatever is in there can wait. The dog did not relax. Ryan reached back to his truck and pulled out an emergency blanket. He wrapped it around Shadow carefully, working beneath his body without disturbing the box. The dog allowed every touch except one. When Ryan tried to slide the ammunition box 6 inches away to make room, Shadow pushed a paw against the lid and held it. Ryan exhaled slowly. "All right, both of you." He lifted Shadow first, supporting his chest and hindquarters. The dog barely had strength to help. The ammunition box stayed pressed against his front legs while Ryan dragged it through the snow beside them with his free hand. Step by careful step, he moved toward the truck. At the rear door, the box slipped slightly from his grip. Shadow raised his head and reached toward it before Ryan caught it again. That small movement told Ryan everything he needed to know. Shadow was exhausted, cold, nearly spent. Yet some old instruction inside him still mattered more than comfort. Ryan placed the dog on the back seat and set the ammunition box directly against his paws. Only then did Shadow lower his head. Ryan pulled the blanket tighter around him and looked at the scratched lid. He did not know who had packed the box, how Shadow had found it, or why the dog had carried it through the cold. But he understood one thing before he closed the truck door. Shadow was not trying to keep the box from him. He was trying to make sure it reached him. Ryan kept the ammunition box pressed against Shadow's front paws during the drive home. The trip took less than 20 minutes, but it felt longer because every few miles Ryan glanced into the rearview mirror to make sure the old German Shepherd was still breathing. Shadow's eyes opened whenever the box shifted. That was all. No panic. No noise. Just awareness. At the house, Ryan carried Shadow inside first. But the moment the ammunition box stayed behind in the truck, the dog tried to lift his head and turn toward the door. Ryan stopped. "I know." He went back, brought the box in, and set it beside the thick blankets near the stone fireplace. Shadow relaxed almost immediately. Ryan noticed. A veterinarian named Dr. Megan Walsh arrived within half an hour. She had treated retired working dogs before and moved with the calm efficiency of someone who understood that fear only made animals spend more energy. She checked Shadow's temperature, breathing, hydration, pause, and heart rate. Cold exposure, exhaustion, dehydration. But he is responding. Ryan let out a breath he had been holding since the service road. Megan adjusted the blankets and moved Shadow slightly farther from the fire. Slow warming. Small amounts of water. No unnecessary movement. Ryan nodded. He was lying on that box when I found him. Megan glanced at it. And he does not want it moved. Not far. Then do not make him fight for it tonight. Ryan agreed. For the next 2 hours, the house settled into silence. Snow tapped against the windows. Wet fur and cedar smoke filled the room. Shadow drank a little water, then slept. Ryan made coffee and sat on the floor nearby, his back against the couch. The ammunition box remained closed. He could have opened it. Shadow was too weak to stop him. That thought was enough to make him leave the latch alone. Daniel had once told him that character showed most clearly when nobody could force you to do the right thing. Ryan had laughed then. He did not laugh now. Near noon, Shadow opened his eyes and seemed more alert. Megan checked him again. Better. Ryan stood and lifted the ammunition box by its side handle. He moved it roughly 6 feet toward the hallway. Shadow's head came up. His front paws shifted beneath him. Ryan stopped. Easy. He carried the box back beside the blankets. Shadow settled. Ryan waited, then tried something different. He moved himself instead. 3 steps to the left. Shadow watched him. 2 steps toward the kitchen. Still watching. Ryan walked behind the box. Shadow's eyes followed Ryan, not the latch. Ryan frowned. He stepped to the opposite side. Same reaction. Megan noticed. He is tracking you. Ryan crouched. Not the box. Shadow looked past Ryan toward a shelf near the hallway. Ryan turned. An old field watch rested there beneath a framed photograph. Daniel's watch. Ryan had kept it after the funeral and rarely touched it. He picked it up. Shadow's ears came forward. Ryan walked back slowly and placed the watch beside the ammunition box. Shadow leaned forward, touched the lid once with his nose, then looked directly at Ryan. Megan stayed quiet. Ryan felt a memory stir, faint and unfinished. Daniel standing on a training field. Shadow waiting beside a container. 3 objects laid out in the dirt. Ryan looked at the watch again. I know this. Shadow touched the box a second time. The mystery was changing. The dog was not asking Ryan to open anything yet. He was asking him to remember how to receive it. Ryan left Daniel's field watch beside the ammunition box and sat back on his heels. Shadow remained alert, but the strain had gone out of his body. The old German shepherd was no longer pressing himself against the lid. He was waiting. Megan stayed near the fireplace, watching without interfering. Ryan searched his memory. Daniel had created small retrieval drills years ago, usually during quiet hours when training schedules loosened and nobody was in a hurry. Not official procedure. Daniel simply liked building problems for Shadow to solve. Ryan remembered 3 personal items placed in the dirt. A recipient had to recognize them in sequence before Daniel gave the release cue. At the time, Ryan had considered it another one of Daniel's unnecessary games. Now the details were returning one by one. He looked toward a narrow cabinet near the hallway and opened the top drawer. Beneath an old flashlight and several folded maps was a Marine Corps Challenge coin. Ryan picked it up. The metal felt cold in his palm. Shadow raised his head immediately. Ryan walked back and placed the coin beside Daniel's watch. The dog leaned forward, touched the ammunition box once with his nose, then looked up at Ryan. Same reaction. Ryan's chest tightened. 2. Megan glanced toward the wall. Then there should be another. Ryan already knew where to look. A faded photograph hung near the kitchen doorway. Daniel stood on one side, Ryan on the other, Shadow sitting between them. At the edge of the frame was an 8-year-old girl in a baseball cap, grinning with a glove nearly as large as her forearm. Emma, Daniel's daughter. Ryan removed the photograph slowly. Shadow's ears came forward before Ryan even crossed the room. That was enough. Ryan set the photograph beside the watch and challenge coin. Shadow pushed himself upright. Megan moved closer, but Ryan lifted one hand. Let him decide. The dog stood for only a few seconds. His legs trembled from exhaustion, but his eyes were clear. First, he looked at the watch. Ryan touched it. Daniel's. Shadow touched the box. Ryan picked up the challenge coin. Mine. You remember Emma using this as second base because Daniel forgot the real markers. Megan smiled faintly. Shadow touched the box again. Ryan lifted the photograph last. The memory returned completely now. Little League field. Saturday afternoon. Emma at home plate. Daniel coaching near third base. Shadow tied in the shade beside the bleachers because Emma insisted he had to attend every game. Ryan had taken the photograph home after Daniel died and never really looked at it again. All of us, he said quietly. Shadow stared at him. Ryan lowered the photograph beside the other 2 objects. He hesitated, then spoke the word Daniel used during those old drills. Confirmed. For several seconds, nothing happened. The fire shifted softly behind them. Snowmelt tapped from the roof outside. Then Shadow lowered one paw from the ammunition box. He moved the other. Slowly, he rolled onto his side and let out a long breath. The lid was uncovered for the first time since Ryan had found him. Megan crouched beside the dog and checked his breathing. I think that was it. Ryan did not touch the latch. Not yet. He looked at the three objects instead. Watch. Coin. Photograph. 3 memories. 3 proofs. The box had never needed a key. It needed recognition. Ryan finally understood why Shadow had watched him instead of the metal. The dog was not protecting the contents from a stranger. He was waiting for Ryan to prove he was still the man Daniel had chosen to receive them. Ryan waited until Shadow had been asleep for nearly half an hour before he moved closer to the ammunition box. Megan checked the dog once more, then nodded. He is stable. Let him rest. Ryan sat on the floor with the field watch, challenge coin, and faded photograph still arranged beside him. Outside, the morning snow had softened into a fine mist against the windows. Inside, the house was quiet except for the fireplace and Shadow's slow breathing. Ryan placed one hand on the metal lid. The dog did not move. No lifted head. No paw reaching forward. No unfinished signal. Whatever Shadow had been asked to do, he had done it. Ryan released the latch. The sound was small, but it seemed louder than it should have been. He lifted the lid slowly. The box was packed tightly. Daniel's dog tags rested near one corner. Shadow's retired service patch lay beneath them. A small digital recorder was wrapped in cloth. Several envelopes had been bundled together with an old rubber band. Beneath them was a child-sized baseball glove, worn soft with age. Ryan stopped. He knew that glove. Brown leather. Faded red stitching. One finger wrapped with black electrical tape. He had fixed that tear in a parking lot before one of Emma's games because Daniel had forgotten the repair kit at home. That was hers, Ryan said. Megan looked over. Emma's? Ryan nodded. He lifted the glove carefully. It felt impossibly small in his hand. Beneath it was another photograph. Emma stood at home plate in an oversized helmet, bat resting against one shoulder. Daniel was visible near third base, waving both arms like a coach who believed enthusiasm could replace strategy. Shadow lay in the shade beside the bleachers, and Ryan sat alone in the aluminum seats, elbows on his knees, watching the field. He turned the photograph over. Daniel's handwriting covered the back. She always checked whether you were still there. Ryan stared at the sentence. A memory returned with painful clarity. Emma stepping out of the batter's box between pitches and looking toward the bleachers. Ryan had assumed she was checking the scoreboard. Another memory followed. Emma running toward the dugout, then turning her head toward the same seat. He had never understood. Ryan set the photograph down and reached for the bundle of letters. Every envelope had his name on it. Ryan Mitchell. Some were written in Daniel's handwriting, others in a child's uneven block letters. The dates began shortly after Daniel's death and continued for more than a year. Ryan's throat tightened. I never got these. Megan did not answer. Ryan picked up the earliest envelope. On the front, beneath his name, Emma had drawn a tiny baseball. He opened it carefully. The first line was simple. Mr. Ryan, does Shadow miss Dad too? Ryan stopped reading. The room seemed to narrow around him. He had told himself he disappeared because Emma needed space. Because Daniel's family would heal better without another Marine standing in the middle of their grief. Because staying close would only remind them of what was gone. He had believed every explanation because none of them required him to admit the truth. He had been afraid. Ryan unfolded the rest of the letter. Emma wrote about school, about Shadow waiting near the front door, about winning a game without Daniel there to see it. At the bottom she had written, I looked for your truck, but maybe you were busy. Ryan lowered the paper. Shadow slept a few feet away, finally free of the box he had carried through the cold. Ryan looked at the remaining letters. There were many, more than he was ready for. The ammunition box had not been hiding military secrets. It had been carrying evidence of every time someone had waited for him while he convinced himself that leaving was kindness. Ryan opened the second letter only after he had folded the first one back along its original creases. The date was 6 weeks later. Emma's handwriting was steadier this time. Mr. Ryan, our team won today. I hit the ball over second base. Dad would have yelled too loud. I looked at the parking lot anyway. Ryan stopped. The house was warm, but his hands felt cold. He reached for the next envelope. Then another. The letters formed a timeline he had never known existed. Emma wrote about a school assembly, a broken bicycle chain, a science fair ribbon, and the first time Shadow refused to sleep in Daniel's old room. She wrote about ordinary things because ordinary things were what children offered when they did not know how to ask an adult to come back. At first, nearly every letter ended the same way. Maybe you can come by sometime. Then the words changed. One letter said, I know you are busy. Another said, Aunt Rebecca says people get sad in different ways. Ryan looked toward Megan. Rebecca must have kept these. Megan nodded toward the bundled envelopes. Maybe she thought you would be ready someday. Ryan opened one dated almost a year after Daniel's death. Emma's handwriting had grown smaller. Ryan read silently until he reached the final lines. You do not have to fix anything. I just thought you might come watch. His eyes stayed on that sentence. It was the simplest request in the box. That was why it hurt the most. Ryan had been good at emergencies his entire adult life. Broken fence, flat tire, sick dog, late-night phone call. He came. He carried. He solved. But sitting in aluminum bleachers while a child played baseball had asked for something harder. Presence without purpose. He placed the letter beside the glove. Black electrical tape still wrapped the damaged finger where he had repaired it years earlier. Ryan remembered kneeling beside Emma's equipment bag while she bounced impatiently on her cleats. Will it hold? She had asked. It will hold. How long? Long enough. She had smiled like that was all she needed. Ryan looked at the glove now. He wondered how many times he had promised objects would hold while quietly refusing to promise the same thing about himself. Beneath the letters was a sealed envelope in Daniel's handwriting. Ryan opened it carefully. Inside was a single card. Play the recorder after you finish your letters. Do not skip ahead. Ryan let out a breath that almost became a laugh. Still giving orders. Megan gave him a small smile. You were going to skip ahead? Absolutely. He did not. He kept reading. The later letters became less frequent. Emma stopped asking whether he would visit. She wrote about winning another game, about switching schools, about Shadow getting gray around the muzzle. Then there was one final envelope. No baseball drawing. No extra note. Just his name. Ryan opened it. Emma had written only 4 lines. Mr. Ryan, I think you probably have a reason. I hope you are okay. If you ever come to a game, you do not have to say anything. You can just sit there. Ryan lowered the paper. For years, he had told himself Emma needed distance from everyone connected to Daniel. The letters said the opposite. She had never asked him to replace her father. She had never asked him to rescue her. She had only asked for a seat, not to stay empty. Ryan pressed one hand against his eyes and breathed slowly until the room stopped blurring. Shadow stirred near the fireplace and opened his eyes. Ryan looked at him. You carried all of this? The dog rested his head back down. No answer was needed. Ryan reached for the digital recorder. The label on the back was written in Daniel's familiar hand. For Ryan. After the letters, he held the device for several seconds, then pressed play. Static whispered through the speaker. Daniel's voice emerged, calm and unmistakable. If you actually read every letter before turning this on, then maybe there is hope for you yet. You are good when somebody needs saving. You are terrible when somebody only needs you sitting nearby. Daniel's recorded voice filled the room, calm and dry in the way Ryan remembered. Ryan stayed seated on the floor beside the open ammunition box, one hand resting near Emma's letters. Shadow slept a few feet away under the warm blankets, his breathing deeper now. Megan stood near the kitchen counter, giving Ryan space without leaving. Daniel continued. That is why I made this stupid box. Ryan gave a quiet breath through his nose. Even years later, Daniel knew exactly how to disarm him. Not as a will. Not as an order. Not because I expect you to take care of Emma if something happens to me. She has family. She has people who love her. Do not turn this into another mission. Ryan looked at the child-sized baseball glove lying beside the recorder. You were there for her before you ever noticed you were there, Daniel said. Practices. School pickup. Broken bike chains. Bad hot dogs at Saturday games. You never called it family because that word scared you more than anything we ever trained for. Ryan lowered his eyes. The words did not feel cruel. That was worse. They felt accurate. Daniel paused on the recording. And I know what you will do if I am gone. You will convince yourself that disappearing is respectful. You will call distance mercy because it sounds better than fear. Ryan's hand tightened around one of Emma's letters. Megan looked toward the fire. If Shadow ever brings this box to you, Do not make me the reason you go back, Daniel continued. Do not show up because you owe a dead man something. Ask Emma what she wants now. She may want nothing from you. If that is the answer, respect it. Another pause. But if she wants you sitting in those bleachers, then sit down. Ryan closed his eyes. He remembered every game he had attended before Daniel died. Emma checking the parking lot. Emma turning toward the seats after a hit. Emma asking whether he would come next Saturday. He had treated those moments like background noise because he was useful somewhere else. You keep thinking love has to look like rescue, Daniel said. Sometimes it looks like staying after there is nothing left to fix. The recorder crackled softly. That is all. No promises to me. No heroic speeches. Just ask her. Daniel's voice softened. And Ryan, if she says yes, try not to leave before the lights go out. The recording ended. Ryan sat very still. No final command followed. No hidden instruction. Just silence. Megan finally spoke. He left you a choice. Ryan nodded. He always hated giving me easy ones. He reached beneath the recorder and found several practical documents packed at the bottom of the box. Retirement records, temporary placement notes, an inventory sheet from an old working dog facility outside Colorado Springs. The dates were recent. After Daniel died, Shadow had retired into the care of a former handler named Michael Grant. Years later, Michael's health declined and he moved into assisted living. Shadow was transferred temporarily to a placement facility operating on part of an old training property. During winter inventory, archived equipment connected to Daniel had been moved into a low storage bay while staff reorganized the building. Ryan traced one line on the report with his finger. Exterior maintenance door opened during snow removal. The next page showed a property map. Ryan recognized the route immediately. The old retrieval path ran from the equipment bay toward the maintenance awning where he had found Shadow. Distance, roughly 3/4 of a mile. Megan read over his shoulder. So he remembered the route. Ryan nodded. The box. The strap. Daniel's scent. The checkpoint. And you happened to drive past. That part was chance. Ryan looked at Shadow. Nothing supernatural had carried the dog through the snow. Training had. Memory had. Loyalty had. Ryan picked up Emma's final letter again. You can just sit there. The mystery of the box was finished. The harder question was not. Ryan had spent years believing that leaving protected everyone from his grief. Now he understood that sometimes absence was not mercy at all. Sometimes it was simply an empty seat someone kept looking toward. Ryan did not contact Emma himself. Daniel's message had been clear, and Ryan understood now that showing up without permission would only turn guilt into another kind of intrusion. The next morning, Megan checked Shadow again before the placement facility sent a transport vehicle for continued observation. The old German Shepherd was stronger than the day before, but he still moved carefully, conserving energy. Ryan followed the vehicle in his truck with the ammunition box secured on the passenger side floor. At the facility, staff reviewed Daniel's old contingency notes, Shadow's retirement records, and the route the dog had taken through the snow. Nothing in the documents gave Ryan a right to enter Emma's life. That mattered. A veteran family services coordinator agreed to contact her guardian privately. Ryan gave her Daniel's recording, the letters, and the photograph from the baseball field. Tell them Shadow is safe, he said. Tell them Daniel left something connected to Emma. Then let them decide. The coordinator nodded. Ryan did not ask for an address. He did not ask for a phone number. He went home and waited. The waiting felt harder than the cold road. On the first day, he cleaned the old baseball glove with a soft cloth and stopped when he reached the strip of black electrical tape around the finger. On the second, Megan called to say Shadow had eaten a full meal and walked nearly 100 feet without assistance. On the third, Ryan found himself driving past a neighborhood baseball field and slowing down for no reason he wanted to admit. Empty aluminum bleachers rose behind the backstop. He kept driving. The coordinator called on the fourth afternoon. Ryan stepped onto his porch before answering. Snowmelt dripped from the roof, and the front range glowed pale gold beyond the trees. We reached Emma's guardian, she said. Ryan gripped the porch railing. All right. Emma remembers Shadow. He closed his eyes briefly. And me? A pause. Yes. Ryan looked toward the mountains. 3 years should have been enough time for a child to stop checking for someone who never came. Apparently, it was not. We showed her the photograph and told her about the letters. The coordinator continued. She asked whether you still had her glove. Ryan glanced through the window. The repaired glove rested on his kitchen table. I do. She said the tape should still be on the index finger because you never knew how to sew leather. Ryan laughed once, quietly. She is right. Another pause. Then she asked if Shadow found you on purpose. Ryan looked toward the ammunition box near the wall. What did you tell her? That he followed an old training route, and you happened to be there. Good. She would like to see him when he is ready. Ryan waited. She also said she would meet you. His throat tightened. Only if her guardian is comfortable. They are. We can arrange it at a community baseball field she knows. A week later, Shadow was cleared for a short visit. Ryan arrived early with the old glove inside a paper bag and Shadow resting beside him on a worn leather lead. The field was empty except for a few patches of snow along the fence line. A car pulled into the lot. A woman stepped out first. Then a 12-year-old girl in a navy winter jacket followed. Emma had Daniel's eyes. Ryan knew that before she even saw him. She looked toward Shadow. The German shepherd became completely still. Emma stopped several yards away. Hey, Shadow. His tail moved once. Then again. Ryan loosened the lead. Shadow walked forward slowly. Emma crouched before he reached her and placed one hand against the side of his neck. The dog leaned into her without hesitation. Ryan stayed where he was. Emma looked up at him from beside Shadow. You still have my glove? Ryan lifted the paper bag. I do. She stood and walked toward him. Ryan handed it over. Emma turned the glove in her hands, found the taped finger, and smiled faintly. You fixed this twice. Ryan looked at the tape. 3 times. Emma glanced at him. I knew you remembered. Ryan had no answer ready. For once, that felt right. He had spent years believing he needed the perfect reason to return. Emma had only wanted proof that he had not forgotten where to sit. Emma did not ask Ryan why he had disappeared. Not that afternoon. She slipped the old glove onto her left hand, flexed the repaired finger twice, then walked toward the aluminum bleachers with Shadow moving slowly beside her. Ryan followed without deciding whether he had been invited. Emma sat halfway up. Shadow lowered himself between their feet, his dark coat warm beneath the pale winter sun. Ryan chose the seat beside her, leaving enough space that she could move away if she wanted. For several minutes, neither of them spoke. Somewhere beyond the outfield fence, a truck passed on the county road. Wind moved through the chain-link backstop with a soft metallic hum. Emma turned the glove over in her lap. I wrote you a lot. Ryan looked at the empty field. I read every one, even the embarrassing ones, especially those. She smiled briefly. Then the smile disappeared. I stopped because I thought maybe you did not want them. Ryan felt the instinct to explain everything immediately. Grief, fear, Daniel, the funeral, all the reasons he had used to make absence sound responsible. He let them pass. I should have come, he said. Emma studied him. Dad used to say you always showed up when something broke. Ryan nodded. He was right. Nothing was broken. I know that now. She looked toward Shadow. The dog had placed his chin across Ryan's boot, as if the conversation required no further supervision. Emma rubbed one thumb along the glove's taped finger. I did not need another dad. I know. I did not need somebody to fix everything. I know that too. She waited. Ryan understood the question she had not asked. I was afraid that being around you would make losing Daniel harder for both of us, he said. So I left before either of us could tell me whether that was true. Emma's eyes dropped to the field. It was already hard. Ryan nodded. I am sorry. No speech followed. No promise that he would never fail again. Emma seemed to appreciate that. After a while, she pointed toward home plate. I practice here on Saturdays. Ryan looked where she pointed. What time? 10. Would you mind if I came? Emma considered him carefully. You can sit wherever you want. The answer was not forgiveness. It was permission. Ryan treated it that way. The next Saturday, he arrived 15 minutes early and sat in the third row of the bleachers with coffee in one hand. Shadow stayed with the placement program while his recovery continued, but Emma still glanced toward the parking lot between warm-ups. This time, Ryan's truck was there. The following Saturday, he came again. Then the next. Some days Emma talked afterward. Some days, she only waved before leaving with her guardian. Ryan did not push. He learned that consistency was quieter than apology. Shadow continued improving, and the organization handling his temporary care began discussing a long-term plan that would keep him close enough for regular visits with both Ryan and Emma. No instant adoption. No dramatic transfer. Just careful decisions made around an aging dog who deserved stability. By early spring, Shadow was strong enough to attend one of Emma's practices. He lay beside Ryan beneath the lowest row of bleachers while Emma fielded ground balls under clear Colorado sunlight. Every few minutes, she looked toward them. Ryan remained seated. When practice ended, parents gathered equipment and cars began leaving the parking lot. Emma came over carrying her glove. "You stayed the whole time." Ryan looked at the emptying field. "I said I would come." Emma sat beside him. "Coming and staying are different." Ryan looked at Shadow sleeping between their boots. He understood exactly what she meant. The field lights had not turned on yet. Evening was still a few hours away. But for the first time, Ryan was beginning to understand that the important part of sitting in the bleachers was not being there when the game began. It was whether anyone still found you there after they stopped needing you to watch. By the time spring settled fully over Colorado Springs, the last snow had disappeared from the edges of the baseball field, and the aluminum bleachers warmed beneath the afternoon sun instead of holding winter cold. Shadow had regained enough strength to walk short distances comfortably, though age still showed in the careful way he lowered himself beside Ryan's boots. Emma's practices had become part of Ryan's week. Not an appointment, he announced. Not a promise, he repeated. Just somewhere he went. He learned which parking space stayed shaded longest, which vending machine ate dollar bills, and which side of the bleachers Emma preferred because the late sun did not get in her eyes. He also learned not to offer advice unless she asked. Some Saturdays she played well. Some Saturdays she struck out twice and barely spoke afterward. Ryan stayed for both. One evening after practice, the other families began leaving while the sky turned orange beyond the front range. Coaches gathered equipment. A maintenance worker rolled a cart toward the storage shed. The field lights clicked on one row at a time, bright against the deepening blue. Emma sat beside Ryan with her old glove resting between them. The black electrical tape on the finger had begun peeling again. Ryan noticed, but did not reach for it. Emma caught him looking. "You were thinking about fixing it." Ryan smiled. "I am trying not to." "Good." Shadow slept beneath the bench, head resting on his paws. For several minutes, they watched the empty field. Emma turned the glove over. "Do you have somewhere else to be?" Years earlier, Ryan would have found an answer before the question finished. Work, weather, an early morning, a long drive. Something practical, something defensible. This time he looked at the parking lot. His truck was still there. Nothing needed him. That was the point. "Not tonight," he said. Emma nodded and leaned back against the cold metal bench. No celebration. No sudden embrace. Just acceptance. The final field lights began switching off from left to right. Shadow opened one eye, then settled again. Emma placed the glove beside Ryan. "You know, you did fix this 3 times. Ryan looked at the worn leather. "I told you. I thought you were exaggerating." Marines never exaggerate. Emma gave him a look that made him laugh. The sound carried across the empty field and disappeared into the evening air. A few minutes later, her guardian texted that she was on the way. Ryan did not stand. He did not start gathering things early. He simply stayed beside Emma until headlights entered the parking lot. When she finally rose, she picked up the glove and paused. Saturday. She walked toward the car, then turned once. Ryan was still seated. Shadow was still sleeping at his feet. Emma smiled and continued across the lot. Ryan remained there another minute after she left. The old ammunition box was stored safely at home now, closed and empty of mystery. Daniel's dog tags, the letters, the photograph, and the recorder had been preserved carefully. The box had finished its work. So had Shadow. What remained could not be trained, carried, or delivered. It had to be practiced. Ryan looked across the dark field, then down at the dog who had crossed snow to bring him back to a place he never realized he had abandoned. Shadow lifted his head and rested it against Ryan's boot. The final light above home plate clicked off. Ryan did not move. For once, nobody needed him to stay. He stayed anyway.